COVID-19.
Yes, sir.
So I again request all the participants कि whenever you are having any sort of query, in such a case, you can put your query in Q&A form, not in the chat box. So this is my request to all the participants. So Dr. Pooja, please go ahead.
Right, sir. I think it's time to start now.
So for within 2-3 minutes, I think we can start
All right,
after
sir.
all participants they are here.
Yes, sir. So we'll wait for 5 more minutes for the rest of the participants to join, and then we'll start with the
Absolutely right.
webinar.
Absolutely
Yes, sir.
right.
Yes, sir. Yes, here we have a query from Mr. Prem Kumar Soni. He's asking that, do we get any e-certificate for attending this webinar? Yes, sir, you'll be getting the participation certificate for this, for attending this webinar. Certainly you'll be getting, and this is for all the participants. Yes, sir. So once again, I request, please make use of the Q&A box on your screen to stay connected, to get connected to us. If you want to, if you have any questions during the webinar, please do not write your questions in the chat box. We'll be addressing only those questions which will be there in the Q&A section, right?
So I think more than 200 participants, they have already joined, and within 2-3 minutes, I think we can start.
Yes, sir, I think we'll start by 11:05. We'll start.
Right.
Yeah.
So the number is increasing rapidly. I think hope for
That's
the
great.
best.
Yes, sir, that's very good. That's really good that participants are really interested to listen to our intellect speaker today.
Yes, definitely.
Very good morning to all the participants, to all the attendees who have joined us today for this webinar. We'll just wait for 2 more minutes and we'll start with the proceedings. Meanwhile, I request you all to, whatever questions, whatever queries you have regarding the webinar, you can type your questions, you can type your queries in the Q&A section on your screen, and we'll be addressing those questions maybe during the webinar or at the end of the webinar. So please do not write the questions in the chat box. And all the participants will be getting the participation certificate. The number of the participants is increasing. That's very good.
It's I think 11:04, and I think within next 1 minute at 11:05 we should start.
Right, sir. have more than 200 participants and all right. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on Indian economy amidst COVID-19. My name is Dr. Pooja Khanna. I'm a faculty with APJ Institute of Management and Engineering Technical Campus. I feel privileged to welcome you all to today's webinar. I'm also pleased to mention that today's speaker is a proud alumnus of APJ ETC. He is a 2002-2004 MBA batch pass out, Dr. Lalit Arora. So dear participants, this is a very challenging times for the country and for all of us individually as well. And this is where our role as management professionals is very important to see that we are able to cure India's economy and manage it in the best possible way. In India, we are navigating through the current lockdown and businesses, they're grappling with unforeseen crises and trying to mitigate several challenges. To help you navigate here and now, we have developed this webinar to guide you across a variety of key and relevant information about the topic. Before we start, let me explain how you can talk to us during the webinar. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type into the question and answer section box. I'll bring them up during the presentation and we will also have time for the questions at the end. And if you don't get to your if we do not get to your questions during today's webinar, we'll be sure to follow up afterwards. We'll get connected to you through the email that you have registered with us. We would love to hear from you during today's webinar. So please make sure that you type your questions in the Q&A section and not in the chat box, please. Now, without taking much of your time, I hand over the proceedings to our Honorable Director, Sir, Dr. Rajesh Banga. Sir, I welcome you.
Thank you, Dr. Pooja. Thank you so much. All friends, a very good morning to all the participants attending the webinar today. APJ Institute of Management and Engineering welcomes you today on this platform where we can share our views and discuss the impact of the pandemic on our economy. My dear friends, sharing with you about the journey of APJ Institute of Management and Engineering. APJ Institute of Management and Engineering, it comes into existence in the year 1997 under the aegis of APJ Education Society. And APJ Education Society, under the umbrella of APJ Education Society, there are total 26 institutions and 16 are of school education and 11 in case of higher education. Apart from this, APJ group is having one university, APJ Satya University. So today, first of all, on behalf of APJ Education Society, on behalf of faculty and students of APJ Institute of Management and Engineering, I welcome the speaker of the day, Dr. Lalit Arora. Dr. Lalit Arora is the alumnus of APJ Institute of Management and Engineering, and very happy to share. At that point of time, he was a very shy boy, very sober, docile, and now we are really happy to see you, Dr. Lalit. You have achieved a lot of milestones and over a diverse experience of around 15 years. In the different sectors, in various private banking, then faculty in different institutions and universities, and he was the part of the faculty of our campus as well. Now he joined State Bank as a faculty in State Bank Institute of Credit and Risk Management, SBI Gurugram. So we welcome you again. And the topic is quite apt with regard to the Indian economy amidst COVID-19. As we can go through the crisis of COVID-19, the whole world economy it is going to affect, and the prospects are here. But definitely with context to the Indian economy, today we are going to discuss in the diverse area. The topic is diverse in nature, but we will try to cover a number of diverse areas during this webinar. I would like to share with you all. I think Dr. Lalit, they will be covering some of the areas, but with regard to the package which is currently being announced by Government of India, by the Honorable Finance Minister of the country, Nirmala Sitharamanji, about the 20,000 lakh crores. In that case, the diverse areas which are being covered, like MSME, the 3 lakh crores package, it is one given to the MSME. Apart from this, the another package in case of MSc, it is around the 20,000 crores. One is the 5,000 crore. Further, along with this, government has taken some initiatives with regard to the non-government sector, like with regard to the provident fund in case of the non-government sector to the tune of 2,500 crores. And I am recalling the Keynesian theory, which was basically used in the year 1928 during the time of depression in the whole world. I think by taking into consideration the concept of Keynesian theory, certain steps are being taken by the government of India. Along with this, the another point which is being discussed in the package One Nation, One Ration Card, I think currently more than 67,000 crore population, they are having the ration card. And why? Because of the food security and some other issues, such initiative being taken by the government of India. And the major chunk it is also given to the agriculture sector, in which I think the major highlights which they highlighted, the NPA in case of the farmers, that is increased from 2 years to 3 years. So definitely that will be a big relief to farmers. And further, with regard to the marketing of agricultural produce, the interstate, and so that they can get maximum return from the produce whatever they are producing, so they can get the maximum produce. In such a case, some initiatives are taken. We are going to touch some of the areas. And further, with regard to the education sector, I think 12 channels, these are being incorporated by Government of India to provide digital education to the different students, means 6th onwards, 7th onwards, and for higher education, certain packages are being announced. So I will not take much of your time. Reason being, we are waiting to hear from our alumnus, Mr. Lalit Arora, Dr. Lalit Arora, currently working as a faculty, State Bank, Institute of Credit and Risk Management, SBI Gurugram. Dr. Lalit, now it is over to you. Thank you so much for joining for our request, and definitely it will be a long hand holding with us with regard to the some of other aspects as well. And in the end, we will discuss about that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Director Sir, for this very nice introduction. Actually, my relationship with the APJ Institute is quite long. And because since I passed out my MBA program in 2004, and I am proudly saying that the things that I have learned at APJ, they have helped me, long in shaping my corporate as well as the academic career. Majority of the people that I'm teaching these days are bankers. And so that's why, I was very excited for this webinar from the day I came to know about this webinar, because since it's been quite some time that I have interacted with the young audience. So thank you for bringing me back to this versatile academic environment, though for a very short span of time we are together. But I hope that the things that I'm going to speak today will add some value to the students and the participants. The topic for today's discussion will be the Indian economy amidst COVID-19. What I'll be doing is I have divided my presentation into 3 parts. First of all, we shall be discussing that what is the impact of this crisis on the Indian economy. I'll be just taking you through the few sectors which have been impacted and what is the quantum of impact. The second part of my presentation would discuss that what are the various steps that have been taken by the Indian government so that we stand somewhere in a secure position in this time of crisis. And finally, I will conclude my presentation by just enlisting some of the short-term as well as the long-term challenges which the government of India is likely to face in these tough times, right? So I'll be sharing my screen, the PPT, with the participants. Yeah, I hope the PPT is visible now.
Yes, sir, it's there.
Okay, okay,
We can
that's
see it, yes.
okay, fine. So as we know that we are going through a very tough time. Coronavirus is something that has made it to the headlines of all news channels and newspapers. Uh, with millions and millions of people getting affected, thousands and lakhs of people losing their lives. This virus seems to create a havoc in the global economy. Now, this is not the first time that we as a nation are facing a crisis. Probably, as far as my knowledge goes, this is maybe the sixth crisis post independence, and probably the second biggest one post liberalization. We had a crisis in 1958, then we had a crisis in 1966, and again followed by another one in 1980. One thing that was common in all these three crises was that they were an outcome of a monsoon failure. And because Indian economy was much of an agricultural, a dominated economy at those point of times, so the impact on India was quite big. Then after that, as we shifted to other modes of earning incomes apart from agriculture, we faced another big crisis in the year 1991, because of which we have to bring in that policy of LPG, liberalization, privatization, and globalization. And it is because of that globalization we have brought in a virus this time. Anyways, globalization is not always bad. With Wuhan market somewhere around 3,500 kilometers away from India, even this geographical distance could not isolate us from this virus. This is the extent of, globalization that is happening. After that, after 91, we faced another crisis, which was the global financial crisis, right? Now, for all the crises that we have faced in the past and the turbulent times that we are going through right now, there are certain fundamental differences between the current COVID crisis and all the previous crises that we have faced. Now, let us try to find out that how this financial turbulence is different from all the previous ones. For instance, if I just compare the current financial crisis with the one we had in 2008, let's take this difference on some basis. The first is on the basis of origination. How did the global financial crisis of 2008 originated? It was basically, the roots of that crisis go back to 2006, when there was, subprime lending in the US. And finally, all the derivative products which were based on the underlying assets, underlying substandard loans, they finally resulted in a lot of, loss for the investors. So the crisis of 2008 was basically a regulatory crisis wherein the regulators completely failed to find out what was going on. But this time it's not because of a crisis in the financial sector. This time we are facing a problem because of a health emergency. And, history has evidence that uh, any financial crisis which is an outcome of a health emergency is likely to, create the scope and the scale and the scope of that financial crisis is huge. If I come on what's happening on the demand and the supply of products and services, if we just go back in the history in 2008, there was a shock on the demand side, wherein the supplies were there. The only problem that people were facing was probably the lack of money in their hand, wherein there was no disruption in the supplies. But this time, because of four lockdowns happening back to back, and with on 31st of March we'll be completing around 68 days of lockdown, there has been a disruption on the supply side as well, especially in the case of non-essential items, which actually contribute towards much in the GDP of India. There was much shock on the supply side as far as non-essential items were concerned, and that is why the government of India had to allow these online platforms like Amazon and Flipkart to start their delivery of products. Actually, it was creating a lot of losses, right? As far as the impact coverage of this crisis is concerned, if we just go back to 2008 crisis, a few countries which were very closely associated with the US, some part of Europe and Latin America, to name a few, they were heavily impacted. But because this time, this coronavirus has spread in almost all the countries of the world, Out of 200 odd countries of the world, I could see only 3 to 4 countries which have not been affected. And these are the countries which have been totally isolated from the rest of the world and nobody would like to visit them. That's why they have been saved somehow. So this time the impact is much large as compared to, the impact of all the previous financial problems that we have been facing. If I come to the level of international cooperation, it was relatively higher in 2008 as compared to this time. Now, why do I say so? It's because, at this point of time, all the countries are struggling with their health packages, and many of them, most of them are busy in developing some kind of vaccines, which actually involve a lot of, R&D expenditures. So the support of one country to another country is very unlikely to happen the way I see it, because it's also a race among the countries. Whosoever develops the vaccine first is going to be benefited heavily in the monetary terms. Though India has taken some benevolent steps, in terms of providing those HCQ vaccine, tablets to the people, but still this time the level of international cooperation is quite less as compared to, the previous crisis. If we just have a look on the policy tools, what the governments did in 2008 and what is being done right now, a majority of the healing of 2008 crisis happened because of the monetary easing. There was a shortage of liquidity in the market, and many monetary measures were taken by the governments to ease out that situation. But this time, because of the scale and the scope of crisis, much is required to be done on the fiscal fronts. I shall be discussing about the monetary and the fiscal, measures which have been taken by the Indian government to come out of this problematic situation. We have some discussions on this as well. Finally, this is a very peculiar situation wherein the governments have to decide between whether to save health or whether to save economy. Now, this kind of a situation has never happened in the past since maybe the last 100 years when we evidenced that Spanish flu, right? So if we just go as per, the economic measures, and if we just try to save the economy, there is a problem on the health. And, on the other hand, if we just try to save the health, there is a problem on the economy. Lifting the lockdown actually is not a solution towards, eradicating the virus. It had to be done because, we cannot let the economy die. And by locking down the country for maybe around 60 to 70 days, what the government has done is it has made all the necessary preparations which were required to fight with this, medical emergency. So as of now, we have not developed any vaccine. What we have done is we have only prepared our health infrastructure that in case the number of cases suddenly starts increasing, we have sufficient number of maybe, beds in the hospitals, and, the doctors are available on their duties. So this time it's a very, dicey and a peculiar kind of a situation. The government is actually facing a lot of problems in deciding whom to save. Is it the health which is important, or it is the economy? And as far as I see the things, the government is taking good steps in saving both of these in very good proportions, right? So these were some of the basic differences of what is the problem right now, and all the problems, the financial problems that we have faced in the past. Now just see, we were talking about the shocks in the demand and supply. In all the previous crises, I have already said that there was a shock in demand, but this time we are facing some problems in the supply as well. Now just try to, we'll discuss these things one by one. On the supply side, we have seen that the factories have shut down, because, it is getting really difficult for the factories to cover their fixed cost. Since the revenues are not coming in, the manufacturing is not happening, and ultimately, no sales is happening. The factories are facing a lot of, difficulty in covering their fixed cost. This is going to be a huge hit to the supply side. Of course, labor shortage is one thing that every manufacturer is, worried about. We have seen a lot of migrants, the interstate movement of the migrants, because of lack of money and lack of shelter. A lot of labor has moved even from Punjab to other states like UP and Bihar. So this is again going to be a problem for the industrial units, wherein they are going to face a shortage of supply of labor. The third important shock in terms of supply is, the disruptions in the input because of, what we can say, the restriction of the movement in the transportation. It is getting difficult for the businesses to get input in terms of raw materials, basically. So that is why, when there is a shortage in the supply of raw material, that is most likely to result in the increased prices of the products. Coupled by the drying cash flows is something, which is really problematic, especially in the case of MSMEs, wherein majority of the transactions used to happen on credit. And now that these credit periods have extended, it is really getting difficult for these small businesses to generate the cash. These are some of the supply side problems that we are facing right now. Let me just give you an overview of what's happening on the demand side. There has been a low discretionary spending. Means what? People are basically spending less on, the lifestyle products, and these are the products which actually contribute much towards, the growth of the economy. There is a weaker global demand since the borders are sealed, and there has been restricted movements of goods across the borders. The global demand has suddenly fallen, and because of which there is a considerable impact on the export as well as the import of India, which I shall be discussing in my next slide. Of course, there has been a loss of income and employment. If I just go as per the numbers, around 80% of the workforce in India is employed in the unorganized sector. And that is one sector which has been, heavily impacted by this coronavirus, this financial turmoil, which is, going on these days. Informal sector is going to be heavily impacted. And we have already seen a lot of, job losses and people moving to their states because they don't have any food, right? And finally, because of all these things, since there is weakened demand for products and services, so that impact is also there in somewhere in the sentiment of the, the stock markets, the stock investors. Ultimately, we have seen that, majority of the shares are down by 40% in their value. So overall, if I just see the sentiment of the market is weak, but yes, definitely there are some good points which I shall be discussing in the subsequent slides of my PowerPoint presentation, right? These were some of the demand and supply shocks. Now I talked about, let's have a look on what is happening across the globe, right? I'm just highlighting the economies, some major economies of the world and how they are getting impacted. If we just have a look on the growth of the overall growth of the world economy in 2009, it was roughly around 2.9%, right? And wherein the Indian growth was pretty good as compared to the world average of 2.9, we grew at somewhere around 5%. But this time, because of this financial chaos, this world economy is expected to go down by 2.4%. Now, if we just have a look of this 1.8% growth, which is a positive number in case of India. Now, this seems to be a very optimistic number. Let me clarify. This is a very optimistic number, and this is based on a lot of assumptions. And even when these assumptions are not even these assumptions will not be fulfilled, it is very unlikely that we'll be able to achieve this growth rate of 1.8, right? In case those things does not turn out to be in favor of India, I shall be discussing those things in the next slides to come. In the case, there are unfavorable circumstances for a very prolonged period in future, this 1.8% is definitely going towards a negative side, and we may ultimately end up contributing towards the negative growth in the GDP of the world economy. If you just have a look on other major players, which is US, US is suffering a lot of losses. Europe is already, I would say, it's already in the ICU, not in terms of health, but in terms of financial health. And one thing that is important to know here is that the world economy was already in a problem, right? Virus has just escalated those problems. Now only those nations in the world, I would say, will be able to survive which have got strong fundamentals. And that is why, one thing which I have observed this time in the policies which are being made by the government, they are focusing very much on, the fundamentals that I'll be discussing in the next slides. Now, just to have a view of what's happening to the GDP of India. Now, let's compare it with what happened in 2008. First of all, if you see the first graph, the black line basically depicts, the projected growth of India from 2008 to 2011. And if you just see the red line, I'm just talking about the first graph. If you see the red line, that was the level of GDP from 2008 to 2011. From 2009 to 2011, we grew at a rate of, a very impressive rate of 8.2%. And we were very close to, the projections. We were very close to the trends. But this time, the situation is quite different. It's very unlikely that we'll be able to catch up with the trend GDP. Now, why do I say that? The major problem being that, though a lot of packages have been given by the government, a lot of monetary support has been extended, but apart from giving monetary packages, there are some more things which are fundamentally important in growth of the economy. There has been a constraint, you can say, a fiscal position of the centers and the states this time, with majority of the states, declaring that they are already short of funds. Many of the states are not in a position to give salary to the employees. Fiscal support is something that is very unlikely in the times to come. And that is, I think, one of the most important things that could ultimately help us to, come out of this crisis situation. Now, if we want to come out of this problem, just see the third graph. If we just want to match with the trend line, we have to grow at a rate which is somewhere close to 11%. From 2021 to 2024, we are supposed to grow at a rate of 11% if we want to catch up with the trend of the GDP. And 11% is something that has never happened in the past in India. So majority of the economists, they are of the view that this time we are going to have a permanent loss of 10% in the GDP. Earlier, this figure was, projected to be 4%. But very recently, only yesterday evening, I got one of the reports from CRISIL wherein it was mentioned that we have approximately, lost around 10% of our GDP. There are certain reforms which are required in order to keep the economy on track. And those reforms would be like, providing the fiscal support, which the government is trying to do. These reforms will be on the domestic and the business front. I shall be discussing these in the details in the next slides. Higher level of foreign investment is something that is very much required at this point of time. And, I'm really sad to say that there has been a huge hit on the level of exports and imports in India. Let's have a look at how this sector is getting affected. I'm just highlighting only the 5 sectors in terms of, export and import, which have almost come to a halt. Just talking on the export side, just see the first one, the first sector is gems and jewelry, right? We have almost stopped exporting gems and jewelry, wherein, the value of exports of India, as far as this sector is concerned in 2019, it was roughly around $24 billion, right? Which is approximately 1% of our GDP. And now that this export has came down almost by 100%, so that means 1% loss out of the 10% that I showed previously is because of gems and jewelry. The second important, industry that where we are, facing a problem in terms of exports is leather, whereas there is a 93% downfall in the exports, followed by the ready-made garments and yarn fabrics. Now, yarn fabric is one industry that is very critical to a country like India, because majority of that manufacturing is happening in the MSME sector, and that is why the government also and the economists also are worried about this particular sector. Coming on to the import side, excuse me. Sorry. Coming on to the import side, Bad news for all the ladies, we have stopped importing gold, right? And that is why we have seen gold prices, rising up in the last 2.5 months, and gold has uh, given a return of around 11% in the last 2.5 months, wherein the current price being somewhere close to 47,300, the price of gold being around 42,500 2.5 months back. Because we have stopped exporting jewelry and gems, that is one of the important reasons that the import of the gold and the precious metals and other stones have also come down. This is followed by electronic goods. A majority of the trade of electronic goods used to happen with China, and that is why the import is also going to get impacted. If I just talk about import numbers in context with our relationship with China, roughly 18 to 19% of the imports were coming from China, which has altogether stopped. And that is one reason the Indian government is giving so much focus on things like Atmanirbhar and all those stuff which is coming in these days. We'll be having a discussion on that as well. So these are some of the sectors that have came to a near halt as far as the exports and the imports are concerned. Now let me just share with you what's happening on the corporate front, because since most of the MBA students are concerned about their jobs and how the placements are going to take place, what is happening to the companies. Of course, companies have also been impacted. Like if I take the industry average, uh, on an average, Indian companies are likely to see a 10% slide in their revenues. Okay. And 10% slide in the revenue actually means a huge amount of, reduction in profits. I'll explain how. The most heavily impacted sector is going to be consumer discretionary services, especially in case of airlines and hotels, wherein there is some panic among the people who will not be traveling much and will not be in a favor of staying in the hotels and going out. As far as the service exports are concerned, we are expecting to see almost zero growth in service exports, right? The one important thing as far as the overall this corporate sector is concerned is that the EBITDA margins of the companies are going to fall. Okay, and they're going to fall faster than the revenues. Now, what does that mean? If somebody has got some knowledge of finance, maybe finance specialization people can understand that if the EBITDA margins are falling faster than the revenues, that means we are talking about those companies which have got a high degree of operating leverage, right? And generally, which are the firms which have a high degree of operating leverage? These are firms in the service sector, wherein a 1 rupee fall in the revenue would maybe create a 4 to 5 rupee fall in the profits. And this is which is really worrisome for the Indian government as well as the banking sector, because around 57% of the GDP is being contributed by the services sector. And if the revenues keep on falling like this, it is ultimately going to get difficult for these companies to make their obligations, to fulfill their financial obligations. From the
So,
credit,
Dr. Lalit, sorry to interrupt. You are touching the apt area. I think there is one question by the anonymous attendee. In this case, what is the scenario of MBA after coronavirus? Is it still a good option to pursue? We should go for entrepreneurship or jobs, etc. And you are touching the apt area. My take on this, it is about when we are talking about the job scenario and all that. Definitely, if there are certain pros and cons of the COVID-19, but now the major manufacturing hub as it is coming to India. So now we were discussing in one of the panel discussion with the government of India by the All India Council for Technical Education, in which the MBA with some specialized fields like supply chain management and then the data analytics and all that, definitely they are having the good growth. And with regard to the manufacturing area, the operations, etc., that will be the upcoming area. So definitely the scenario, it is right now as per the profitability or the source which is shown by the Dr. Lalit, it is as such. but I think the packages which are being announced, how the micro units, some relief is given to the micro units, then to the small units, then to the medium level units. So I think, but not at a faster rate, but we are going to recover. So now MBA with the different areas, with a different part of specializations, definitely it will be a better choice in the days to come. So this is my take, and I think later on, Dr. Lalit, you can also elaborate on this.
Just let me add one point here. If we see, hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir. We
Yeah.
can hear you,
Yes,
sir.
you're audible, sir.
Okay. See, if we see the loss of revenue or the loss of profits in terms of corporate sector, I'd like to divide this into two parts. First is, the already established big companies, the large cap companies. And second is, that part of the corporate sector, which we known as startups. So majority of the problem in terms of jobs is going to happen with the startups. We were very much appreciative of all these, poster boys of Oyo and Ola and, Swiggy's and Zomato's, the phenomenal growth that they have grown. But this crisis has finally revealed that, how fundamentally weak these companies are, because they can't even sustain this crisis. And the moment, the problem has come up, they have started laying off the employees. But as far as the big corporate sectors are concerned, where generally the MBA students, they get placed from institutes like APJ and, the surroundings, we don't have that kind of a problem, because we have good number of companies and good brands coming in for placements like banks and insurance companies. So I don't think that's going to take much of a hit. In many of the cases I've seen, companies like Oyo and Zomato and Swiggy, they have cancelled, the pre-placement offers for the students of even IIMs. And that is one thing that is creating a lot of havoc, because, that shows that how weak these companies are actually fundamentally. Though they were showing phenomenal growth, but when it comes to a problematic time, it is really, they don't have the fundamentals which are strong enough to hold their workforce. Anyways, we'll have, yeah.
So now that we are touching this topic, there's another question by Ma'am Shweta Kapoor. What is
Yeah.
the scenario of MBA after coronavirus, and is it still a good option to pursue for, or should we go for entrepreneurship or jobs? So
No, as far as any degree is concerned, I don't have any apprehensions in saying that MBA is a MBA is a wonderful course, and it was a wonderful course. Though yes, there have been some decline in terms of, salary package and placements, but MBA is something that is always going to stay in demand in the times to come as well, because this is one sector which actually, focusing on adding the value to the industry.
absolutely, sir. Yes, sir. So you can, Dr. Lalit, you can continue with this, or shall we start with the questions, or you still want to continue with your slides?
Just give me 5 more minutes and then
Right,
we can
sir.
take questions.
Right, sir. Right, sir. Right.
Okay. So coming on two very important financial aspects in the terms of credit, two very important aspects from the lender's perspective. Since I'm working in a bank, and lending is something that we are very much into it. We are very deeply into it. That is the bread and butter for us. Now, there is a problem which we are going to see in terms of the debt portfolio of the corporate sector, right? There is one very important ratio, which is called ICR, interest coverage ratio. This is basically a measure of how able the company is in payment of, the interest which is due on the loans. And ICR, if it is less than 1, basically it is calculated as EBIT, is earnings before interest and tax, divided by the outstanding interest. Okay. So finance people might know where these things are going now. So if this value is less than 1, basically means that the companies do not have the capacity enough to pay their outstanding interest for a particular year. Now this figure, this percentage of this companies having ICR less than 1 was 22% last year of the total debt portfolio, wherein we are expecting this percentage to increase to 32% this year. And there is one more important ratio, which I'll just discuss very fast, which is debt to EBITDA. If it is greater than 4, it is a problem for the bankers. So if these two ratios are going to deteriorate for the companies, we would ultimately end up in, a bit higher level of NPAs. Whereas the average of NPAs as of now is 9% of the total loans that we are giving. We are expecting that the NPAs for the companies are going to increase to roughly around 11.5%. So that is one thing which should worry, the bankers, and especially when it comes to the performance of MSMEs. This is one sector, though it gives employment to the maximum number of people in the country. And this is one sector which is really facing a liquidity squeeze at this point of time. And I shall be discussing in the further slides that what has government done in order to, bring some good news for this sector. So this was an overall view of what's happening in the corporate sector. Just an extension of what I already discussed, the weak credit metrics. That means I was talking about those two ratios, ICR and the other one, debt to EBITDA. The major impact of that is seen on the cotton yarn sector. If you can just see the slide here, we had 25% of the companies in 2020 for which the interest coverage ratio was less than 1. And this number of companies is going to significantly increase to 68%. Now, why cotton yarn? Why not other industries? Because if you just go a few slides back, I was talking about the export of the cotton yarn and other products, textiles. That is one area which is actually a hindrance towards the growth of this. We have stopped with all the exports, and that is why cotton yarn, since majority of it is based in the MSME sector, this sector is going to take a huge hit. Very quickly, I'll just take you through some of the other sectors, how they are behaving at this turbulent time. Here in red, you can see the long period averages, which is the average growth in the last 10 years, right? And if we just see the growth, one industry that is giving us positive numbers is the telecom services, right? Now, why telecom? Why not other industries? Because, in this time when the physical movement has been stopped and we cannot interact with people, moving here and there, this online platform is one thing that is actually shaping the future of many industries across the globe. Even if you talk about education, education is also happening online. So because of all the, reliance coming on to this internet, all things happening on the internet, telecom industry is one industry which is likely to grow in the future, whereas majority of the other, sectors are likely to see a downward trend. Now here I'm discussing two cases. One is the base case, if you can see, FY21, and second is the downward scenario, downside scenario. Base case is the case if we expect the Indian economy to grow at a rate of 1.8%. I'm taking it as a base case, which is very unlikely to happen, right? Still a very optimistic number, I would say. And downside scenario is something, wherein we experience a zero or a negative growth. So even in case there is a downside scenario, telecom sector is one sector. Of course, apart from agri, you'll see some growth there as well. Telecom sector is one sector which is likely to grow at a very good rate of somewhere close to 15%. And the reason is because I've already explained that, majority of the things are going to happen through, online platforms. And these companies are the ones which are going to provide us those, platforms. So that's why I'm very much positive on this telecom services sectors. Now, just to show what's happening on the corporate front in terms of, what's happening on the ground in terms of working capital cycles. If somebody understands what's the working capital cycle, it is basically, the cash conversion cycle from the point you spend cash till the time it comes back to the business. That is called one working capital cycle, right? And if we see what has happened to the working capital cycles, there is not much of a difference in terms of large and the medium corporates. But yes, MSME sectors, especially, the small sector, the small companies are getting very much affected. Whereas the normal working capital cycle was somewhere close to 189 days, right? Now in low growth years, especially, post coronavirus and during this time as well, this working capital cycle is roughly going to increase to 220 days. And, the more is the length of this cycle, the more is, the kind of liquidity crunch that these businesses are, supposed to face in times to come. Now, why is this working capital cycle getting extended for the businesses? The major reason is because of the receivables. MBA students must understand, that receivables are basically those payments which we are supposed to receive from our debtors. right? And since debtors are also in a very difficult situation and they also are facing a shortage of funds, this level of payments has gone down. With this level of payments going down, this working capital cycles have stretched in, and that is why we have seen Indian governments coming in for the support of the MSME sector, which is a very good move, I would say, in order to provide liquidity to this sector.
Dr. Lalit,
Sir.
sorry to interrupt you. Reason being, we are having a limited time for this Zoom session, and I hope in next of your slides you will cover some quick points. But meantime, I think I should go by certain questions. But later on the answers, some of the answers I have observed you have already given during the different slides. But you can touch upon, or all the panelists, they can touch upon any of the question. I'm just reading out few of the questions. For example, one by the anonymous attendee, it is what are the economic crises going to affect middle class and rural people of the country after the lockdown? About my take on about the rural part of the country means the package which is given for the agriculture sector. It is 2 lakh crores being emergency credit fund. It is created by Government of India. Emergency credit fund means that will be available for farmers only for the rural part of the country. And then further, as discussed earlier, in this case, the NPA in case of farmers and for the rural sector, it is now shifted from 2 years to 3 years. In other words, we can say now NPA will not be there in this case. So I think this is the sort of arrangement for the rural part of the country. So I'm reading out some other questions as well. Dr. Lalit, I think you can take up some of the questions later on during your discussion. One more question by Shruti Sharma. It is by factories are shut down for more than 2 months, as now majority of laborers, they have moved to hometowns and they are not will be coming back soon. It will serve, there will be severe crisis in case of factories, agriculture and construction industry because of this. So what could be the way to solve this? What will be the gap between demand and supply and measures to solve it? I think about demand and gap supply in one of the slide number 3rd and 4th, you can elaborate it later on. And the further again, the question it is about somewhere similar. It is mainly built on, our economy is mainly built on middle class people and their business activities. What should the government do for those people? I think you can touch the diverse sectors, whatever the relief package it is given by the Government of India. So these are the few questions, and I think now I will request to the moderator, in case some few other queries she can raise about those in your discussion, and then we can proceed further.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Rohit, sir.
I've
Yes, sir.
almost finished with the first part of my presentation, so I think we can take some questions before I jump
Yes,
into
sir.
the second part.
Yes.
Right?
All right, sir. All right, sir. We'll go ahead and take some time for questions now.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
before I start with the questions, I feel honored to introduce our panelists for today's webinar. We are delighted to have amongst us Dr. Anu Sahi, Senior Faculty, APJIM ETC. Ma'am has very good command over finance and economics and is a recipient of Best Teacher Award by ISTE. We have with us Dr. Varun Iyer today, Senior Faculty of Marketing. He is also the Training and Placement Officer of APJIM ETC and has more than 15 years of experience. And then we have Dr. Rajwinder Singh Tillo, Senior Faculty of Business Environment, who has very good hold over research, and sir has more than 12 years of experience in both corporate and academics. I welcome you all, sir, ma'am and sir. So the first question that I'm going to read out here is, the trust level of FDI is weakening in Indian economy due to COVID-19. So what's your take on that? I think it's a very legitimate question. But
Yes, very,
yes.
very logical question.
Yes,
and what
actually.
I would say is that, yeah, what I'll say that it's not weakening only in case of India. It's happening across the globe, right? So nothing to feel offended as far as Indian economy is concerned, because see, this is a very big problem that we are going through right now. Okay, and if you just have a look on the numbers in 2019, if I just take collectively the amount of FDI and FII and all the foreign remittances coming in India, that was roughly to the tune of around $83 billion, right? This time, of course, because of this problem, we are going to see a downfall in the FDI levels as well, somewhere to the tune of around 25%. Okay, but that does not mean that the money is not going to flow in the times to come. What I have observed is that, the global funds are looking at the markets. but markets are not ready to attract the global funds. So one thing that the government of India right now is doing is, with the help of this Atmanirbhar Abhiyan and, this coming up with these, uh, you can say, measures like Make in India and all those things. These are actually very good measures by the government to attract foreign investment. And I'm very optimistic on one industry wherein the government had allowed 100% of FDI, that is medical industry. Hospitals are now allowed to receive 100% of FDIs, right? All the companies which are into medical devices, they are allowed to have 100% FDI in their shareholding. And there is one more thing, which is the greenfield projects in the case of medical industry. So I would say that a lot of good measures are being taken by the Indian government to attract the level of FDI, and probably in the next 6 to 8 months, we will see these levels rising up.
Right, sir. I
So,
request. Yes, sir.
am I audible to participants as well as to
Yes,
everyone?
sir. Yes,
Yes,
so we
sir.
can hear you, sir.
So, Professor Lalit, it was, you can say, quite optimistic, you can say, reply from your side.
Just
I would
to
also like to add some.
just to interrupt Dr. Varun, I think Dr. Lalit, you can stop sharing your this so that all can be visible. So later on you can add up the next slides.
Yeah.
Yeah, please,
Okay.
Dr. Varun, please continue.
Okay, thanks a lot, sir. So my view is that see, FDI is you can say biggest problem which everyone is facing now. If you have seen the export level of Japan as well as South Korea, they have decreased to 50%. They have decreased, their level of export has been decreased to 50%. This means every developed economy is now facing the crisis. But yes, Indian economy in comparison to those developed economies, they are at a level where they can come up to expectation of you can say people. But for that, they need to have a policy where government should focus on you can say relief related to a debt. No doubt, I have seen government, they have given lucrative package to SMEs where they have provided a you can say good offer of 3.7 lakh crore out of 20 lakh crore. But that is in the form of loan, which will again create a bit of burden on them, which already they are bearing due to the you can say loan they have already taken from you can say different banks. So my you can say view on this you can say export activities that Indian exports, or you can say Indian export industry, they have to create an example that is called as lead by example for all nations. Rather than looking for domestic consumers, they have to they have to come up with those services which can create ion impact for all the other nations or developed nations, and they can start you can say attracting towards our export, and automatically it will be win-win situation for India. So rather than working on domestic, you can say buying, we have to work on international buying, and we have to create the services as well as activities which should create an attraction for other nations.
Yeah, exactly. And Dr. Varun, one thing I'd like to add here is that, it's not that we are not in a position to manufacture the products. The only thing that we are suffering right now is that we are not able to curtail the cost. Okay.
Yes, yes.
That is one area wherein, the other economies are dominating over us, especially in China. And this move taken by the government of India in case of MSMEs, wherein they have told that any order which is less than rupees 200 crores is compulsorily to be procured from India. We are not going to purchase the things the value of which is less than 200 crores from any other outside economy. So that is a big move which will give a boost to our Indian this corporate sector.
Yes, but again we need to wait. We need to because this is situation which was not a normal situation for every country, even for every nation. So I think time will give us you can say soothing effect to all the export oriented units.
See, coronavirus has taken 2 to 3 months to spread. So this fiscal and monetary support will also take its time, and definitely
it will take some time
to see things coming up. Maybe towards the second half of 2021, we'll be back on the track.
So next question.
Thank you, Dr. Lalit and Dr. Varun, for giving such a logical explanation to this question. The next question is agriculture. Okay, it's the impact of COVID-19 on agriculture and its repercussions. Probably the person wants to ask, agriculture is the backbone of Indian economy, and the pandemic is changing the face of Indian labor. And majority of the labor have moved to their hometowns and will not be coming back soon, so which can lead to severe crisis. So they want an insight on the impact of COVID-19 on agriculture and its repercussions.
See, apart from telecom sector, I already discussed agriculture sector is the second sector in which we are going to see a positive figure of growth. The earlier expectation was roughly around 4.5%, but now because of these extended lockdowns and maybe the rising number of cases, still there is going to be a growth of around 2.5%, right? Some very good measures have been taken by the government of India, which has given some strength to the agriculture sector. Like we had one scheme called, PM Kisan scheme, wherein a majority of the farmers, which were financially distressed, they were supposed to receive around 6,000 rupees per year in 3 installments. So government is coming up with a lot of, packages which would ultimately help the farmers in terms of maybe procuring seeds, procuring agricultural products and all those things at very less prices. So agriculture sector, I'm very optimistic on the agriculture sector as of now, and since it is roughly adding somewhere to the tune of 15% to the gross value added, this is one sector which is likely to give us a positive figure of growth.
Right, sir.
Of course, yes, the impact is there, but I don't see this impact to be there, especially in the agriculture sector for a very elongated period of time.
Right, sir. The next question that we have is, as the global giants are looking to shift their manufacturing facilities from China, how do you think this can be an opportunity for a country like India? And a very valid question and a very interesting one also.
See, every country is trying to bring back the business from China, not only India, right? Let me tell you some interesting things here. American people, they're spending billions of dollars in making payments to those companies which would stop their manufacturing facilities in China and they'll go to US. This amount is roughly around $2 billion. Okay. And last week I was just reading a few news on this as well, wherein Donald Trump was convicted of making some attempts to a German company which was very close to discovering the vaccine for coronavirus. So he offered a huge amount to that company to stop the manufacturing facilities in Germany and bring those facilities to US. Now the same thing can be done in India also, right? But there are certain problems. There are certain problems on the grassroots level. You just don't talk about big players coming to India. Even if we want to start a small business, let's say we want to start a small kirana shop in India, as per the Shops and Establishment Act, there are 22 regulations which have to be fulfilled. Now you just tell me one shopkeeper who has actually fulfilled these 22 regulations, you will never be able to run the business, right? And what does that mean actually? Because you are not fulfilling the regulations, ultimately, it ends up in corruption. That is one thing which we have to very carefully look at. And this is something which is very close to my heart as a banker, because I generally deal with many of the people from the branches who are in contact with the shopkeepers, local shopkeepers. And whosoever starts a small shop in India, he does it by either selling the jewelry of his wife or his mother. Okay. And when that person goes to the banks or financial institutions to take a loan, we ask for collaterals and we ask for the margins. Okay. Now this is
rightly said, Dr. Lalit, regarding this. I agree. Even Japanese has given 22 billion for their companies working in China to come back to there. And you also mentioned a lot of constraints regarding India. And the major constraint is land acquisition. If we talk about Saudi Aramco to POSCO, we have witnessed that there are a lot of land acquisition problems. So with that, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi recently had been developing a pool of land, and that too twice the size of Luxembourg. That is around 461,000 land purpose with the collaboration with the states for this purpose only. That with the Atmanirbhar and all that the companies should come and manufacture in India. And the constraints include, like, we don't have good suppliers that can supply quality products. We have less. We don't have skilled labor in comparison to China. And the majority of the Chinese people are well tuned to the US manufactured product, and they have good supply chain. So it will be very very hard for the companies to come back from China. And again, the Chinese market is huge, right? So you cannot ignore that, right? India is doing their bit by reducing corporate tax, right? So providing land and making the ease of business and
Yeah.
everything, right? And I will also like to quote an example from Uday Kotak, who recently tweeted that the China can be the world factory and India can be the world office, as Facebook, Microsoft, Twitter have made their employees work from home, and Twitter has given its thing to their employees that for indefinite period they can work from home. So he said that why to pay 2 lakh dollar to an engineer in US? Why don't you come to India to have a
Yes.
cheap, low cost? I don't use cheap, but a low cost
Yes.
labor in engineers in India, right?
Right.
So they can serve their purpose. So I guess that's a wonderful idea from the government of India. And
Yes, absolutely.
so,
I'm in total agreement with you. And one thing is that I very strongly believe that we need to strengthen the small businessman, right?
Right.
As I already discussed, whenever they start a business, they don't have enough funds, and when they go to banks, they are asked to bring in margin money and collaterals. This is the reason why they are moving to the unorganized, lending channels, and they are not coming in the bankable population in the assets. Okay, so this is very surprising and very tragic that a businessman, a small keeper, a shopkeeper is getting a loan from the unorganized sector at a rate of 4% per month, wherein Amazon is getting a loan at the rate of 3% per year. So how is this difference, is this gap going to be eliminated, is something that the government of India should look at. This
Thank
ease of
you,
doing business is a wonderful.
Right. I think because of the paucity of time, I think we can take 2-3 quick questions later on. And Dr. Lalit, my request, how many slides you are left with in order to complete your the whole presentation?
Sir, I'll try to sum up in maybe 5 to 7 minutes.
So I think now all slides means you can narrate with one go, so that later on we can take up a few 2-3 quick questions. But I assure all the participants later on we will go by all the questions, and I think the mail ID to be mentioned in the chat box so that later on all the queries we can reply by the email or some other channel. Thank you so much, Dr. Lalit. And so I think 2-3 questions we will take after the brief discussion by Dr. Lalit in 5-6 remaining slides. So thank you, Dr. Lalit. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
Just a minute, sir. My request to all the attendees, please type your questions in the Q&A section and not in the chat box, please. Because if we will be discussing your questions at the end of the session. So please type your questions in the
coming up.
Yes, sir.
Questions
Yes, a lot of questions are there.
Try to answer few, but later on we will try our level best to reply all the questions.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Okay, is the screen visible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now let me just take you through what are the various steps that the government of India has taken, right? As of now, we have seen, majority of the things coming in form of packages, this 20 lakh crore, the magical number coming in from the finance minister, which was, further announced in 5 tranches. I'll just be covering a few important steps that are going to have a quantum impact on, this problem. The first is on the monetary front, wherein, we have seen the Reserve Bank of India, cutting down the policy rate and, the CRR. Basically, policy rate is something called a repo rate, wherein the banks borrow from the central bank. The commercial banks borrow from the central bank. We saw that RBI came down with this policy rate in March this year from 5.15% to I think 4.40%, which was the lowest policy rate in the last 15 years. But that was even not enough. The government, the RBI further had to reduce this repo rate from 4.4% to basically 4%, which is now at its lowest in the last 15 years. The purpose was to inject liquidity in the market, wherein people would borrow at the lesser rates, and that would encourage people to go in for more bank funding, so that some money can be brought in the economy. Similarly, some relaxation to the banks was given in terms of a CRR cut, wherein it was reduced from 4% to 3%, and banks actually had more amount of funds in their hands, which was available at the disposal of the public. Second important monetary measure was in the form of loans for the stressed for the businesses and working capital interest moratoriums. The moratorium is basically nothing but an extension given by the banks to the clients, who to the borrowers, to pay their EMIs, right? So this moratorium was also given in two tranches. First was it was not actually a waiver of interest payment. We have just deferred the interest payments, right? So first this benefit was given for the month of March, April, and May, wherein the RBI has now extended it to for the months of June, July, and August. So that means for these 6 months, these business units were not required to pay any interest and the principal amounts. But that obviously does not mean the waiver from these amounts. These amounts will get collected, they'll get cumulative, and finally, when the things come back on track, maybe in the month of September or October, we will see some cash flows, happening for these companies. These amounts are supposed to be paid. Another very important measure in terms of this monetary support was given by, the Reserve Bank of India to the Government of India in the form of advance limits. These are basically the funds which are given by the Reserve Bank of India to the governments, so that these funds can be utilized for the welfare of the public. This is something called the ways and the means advance. Okay, this amount is given by the Reserve Bank to the governments for a period of 90 days, right? The rate of interest that they charge is the repo rate, basically. And till date, the Reserve Bank has given around 2 trillion Indian rupees to the government of India, out of which 80% to 85% they have already consumed and spent on a lot of relaxations which are given to the Indian population. Another important measure in the form of monetary support was something called the TLTRO, targeted long-term repo options, in which this was a move by the RBI to strengthen the securities market in India, because there was a negative sentiment among the investors also. This is the amount of fund which is given by the Reserve Bank to the commercial banks, with the condition that this money is compulsorily to be invested in the securities market, specifically in case of the debt portfolio, just to strengthen the investor sentiment, because we have seen a lot of mutual funds in the past who have stopped their debt schemes with debt portfolio giving a very less return, and in many cases the defaults have also happened. So this is a very welcome move as far as the monetary front is concerned, right? Coming on to the fiscal side is something which actually required a lot of injection of money from the government. But as of now, it is I'm really sad to say that the support that the government has given on fiscal front is relatively less as compared to what was required. Okay, well, let me just take you quickly through what is the amount of money that has been injected in the system. we all know this magical figure of 20 lakh crore which is going to come in the system. Okay, now out of this 20 lakh crore, how is the government going to distribute this amount? This 20 lakh crore actually includes the monetary measures also, which were already taken by the Reserve Bank of India, and this includes some fiscal measures. Now out of this 20 lakh crore odd figure, it is only 2.6 lakh crore that is actually going to be dispersed by way of cash in the public. No, cash disbursement of cash does not mean giving currency notes. It's maybe in terms of crediting some amounts in their accounts. We have some schemes by the government coming up, like Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, wherein some of the amounts are being credited to the poor household. Majority of this relief, which the majority of this 20 lakh crore is going to be distributed by way of guarantees from the government, which is not going to be the immediate transfer of cash from the government to the people. Major of it is going to be in the form of guarantees, wherein if a business takes a loan from the bank, and in case that business is not in a position to pay back, it's a guarantee by the government to the banks that we will make the payment good. This is very similar to what we experienced in case of Mudra loans, wherein the loans were given to the businesses which were where the banks were not asking for any collaterals, and in case any default happened, so that payment used from the is and has been, but we don't mind whether it is fiscal support or people are looking right now is to get out of this financial chaos. And very rightly said by someone, it does not matter what's the color of the cat as far as it is eating the mice. Okay, so let's hope that all these measures collectively work together, and we hope to see some positive figures of growth maybe in next 8 to 10 months, right? One thing that I would like to touch very quickly, and though it's very important, is what is happening to MSMEs now. This is a sector which has been, impacted very badly, and because it employs around 75 to 80% of the workforce, this was something on the priority list of the government. One thing that the government proposes to do is to change the classification of MSMEs, wherein earlier we used to distinguish MSMEs on the basis of manufacturing and service enterprises. What the government proposes this time is to club these limits and add one more parameter. Earlier, the investment in plant and machinery was something that used to be the differentiating factor in micro, small, and medium units. But this time, this is on the basis of investment in plant and machinery. And one more thing that they have added is the turnover. Now, the reason of adding turnover in this classification is basically it's going to help the MSMEs also and the government also. This turnover is going to be captured with the help of the GSTN number, and it is going to be relatively easy for the government to trace the revenues and the profits of these businesses as far as the tax collections are concerned. What's good for MSMEs in this classification is that in many of the cases, wherein there were businesses which had huge investment in plant and machinery, so they used to be shifted from micro to small, wherein they were not able to avail certain subsidies and benefits from the governments. So this, including turnover, is something that would help them to move back from a small to a micro category, wherein they can avail certain subsidies and benefits. Okay. Apart from that, government proposes to give collateral free loans. Collateral, I hope everybody understands, whenever we go to a bank for a loan, they ask for something girvi rakhna hai. So that is what banks were asking from the MSMEs, and government has said that the collateral free loans are to be given to the MSMEs. 100% of the credit guarantee for the lenders with the banks which are giving the funds to MSMEs, the government is going to give 100% guarantee to the banks that this payment is going to be made good. In case the business makes a default, it ultimately becomes the responsibility of the government to make the payment. So that is a very welcome move, and bankers are also happy because actually it does not adds to the risk portfolio of the banks. And one last thing that is very important, I already discussed also, that any global tender which is less than rupees 200 crores. Earlier, we were procuring from an outside country, maybe China or some other country. Sorry. I'm sorry. Any global tender which is less than 200 crores of Indian rupees it is compulsory to be procured from the Indian manufacturers. So that is a very welcome move, wherein it will give a big boost to the MSME sectors. Just a small look on what's happening in the healthcare sector. Now we have realized that our healthcare facilities are not up to the mark. If we just see the Indian spending for the last 10 years, it is roughly 3% of the GDP, right? And now in this tough time, the government has realized that, healthcare infrastructure is that we have really, not worked upon. And the purpose of doing this lockdown was also this, that since our healthcare infrastructure was not ready, we were not doing lockdowns with the purpose of eradicating coronavirus. We were doing lockdowns for the purpose of preparing ourselves in case there is a huge surge in the number of cases. And with this 68 days of lockdown, the government has tried to create enough health infrastructure. An additional package of around 15,000 crores have been given by the government towards this, right? Agriculture, I've already discussed. Just a few important points I'd like to highlight. This is one sector which is we are expecting that we'll see a positive growth. Maybe that growth number can be less, somewhere around 2.5%, but still it's going to be in green. So that's very good news. Since agriculture sector adds somewhere close to 15% of the gross value added, it's very important that we should see some good numbers coming in from this sector. It's a really important sector, roughly contributing towards 15 to 17% of the GDP. As far as monsoon is concerned, there's a good news from the IMD that we'll experience a normal monsoon, and and I pray to God that this happens, so that at least it's a relief to the farmers. And the policy response as far as the PM Kisan Yojana is concerned, it has been good, but I think a lot of ground needs to be covered on this front as well, right? Some of the challenges I'll quickly cover. There are some long-term challenges and there are some short-term challenges which the Indian government has to take care of. If you remember the earlier figure of 1.8%, which I showed in the the global impact slide of GDP, that 1.8% of growth was based on certain assumptions, and these are basically some of the assumptions. If they go on a downward side, this 1.8% is something which is very unlikely to happen. The immediate problems that we have at hand is, first is the uneven health recovery. If this happens, this is something which will be beyond the control. In many of the states, we have already seen that medical facilities have already, they have reached their maximum capacity. So if there is some uneven health recovery patterns coming in the times to come, that would add some problems. Let's hope that this does not happen. Second immediate problem is that there is going to be a large rise in the public debt, because there is no cash flow happening in the businesses. Most of the businesses are now relying on debt as the only means to survive with their businesses. So public debt is going to increase, and the government has to ensure that there are sufficient measures in place so that there is a minimum case of a default happening in the times to come. Relaxation of restriction is something that the government has to do. Maybe they have done it unwillingly, but this was very much required in order to keep the cycle of the economy going on. If there is a second wave of emerging cases, this is going to be a real problem. This is an immediate challenge for the government, because now they have given certain relaxations in the lockdown. So we might see a second wave of cases coming in, and it is an immediate challenge for government to take care of these kind of things. One good move that they have done is that in majority of the hospitals, around 70 to 80% of the beds have been reserved for the coronavirus patients. And probably that was one reason of opening the liquor shops also. It's a very strange relationship. Though the majority of the revenue of the state comes from liquor, that was one reason. Second reason was that, because those who are very habitual to consuming these kind of products, we don't have space for those people in the hospitals. In case we don't give them liquor, they'll obviously run to the hospital, and we don't have space for them. Opening a liquor shop was again a very a welcome move in that aspect as well, because we have space for coronavirus patients. Of course, as far as the fiscal support is concerned, there is no further possibility from the government side. They are already facing a very packed fiscal situation after announcing 20 lakh crore. There is no further scope coming in, and of course, monsoon failure is something that we always depend on, likely to be very normal this year. These were some of the short-term challenges which the government has to face in the very short term. And just to close my presentation, just to end up my discussion with the long-term challenges that we have in front of the government is, first is the high population density. We are a very densely populated country. In comparison with China, we are 3 times. Though they have more population than us, but as far as the density is concerned, we are a more densely populated nation. Weak health infrastructure is something that I have already discussed. We need to do, we need to go a long way in case of health infrastructure. Fiscal space is limited, already discussed. Yes, unorganized labor, which is working in, the corporate sector, that needs to be taken care of. As far as the agriculture is concerned, though there has been a good achievement in terms of PM Kisan scheme, out of around 14.5 crore families, which was the target of the government to cover, they have roughly covered around 8.9 crore. Some ground needs to be covered on this front as well. Jan Dhan Yojana was a good scheme that was initiated by the government of India. They have already announced the support of 20.5 crores, right? But still, a lot of unbanked population is still there, which needs to be, brought in the scope of these schemes. One sector that has been very badly impacted is the informal firms. Basically, these are small businesses which are running in the household, and they're selling things on a daily basis to just keep their family expenses running. This has taken a huge hit, and with 94% of these small businesses, they are not even registered with the government, and 95% of them having less than 5 members running the business. This is a challenge for the government. It's going to be a long-term challenge for the government to bring these people in the formal organized sector. Right, and SMEs is something that I have already discussed. So these were some of the short-term as well as the long-term challenges. So till now, I'll just sum up with what we have discussed. We have discussed that what's happening in the economy, in the global economy, in the Indian economy, what are the sectors that have been affected, what has been the extent to which the effect has taken place, what has been done by the government, and finally, these are some of the challenges that the government is going to face. So with this, I'll just stop here, and in case now we can open the discussion for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lalit Arora, for such a comprehensive and informative presentation. Thank you so much.
Maybe
Sir,
So, I think Dr. Lalit, please stop sharing screen right now, and so that we can go for quick questions. Dr. Lalit, I think now I am becoming to some extent selfish on my part, as reason being we are supposed to cover the diverse sector of the Indian economy, and so many sectors are available. But I think in one webinar, definitely it is not possible to cover all the diverse area. And in days to come, definitely we will plan some series of webinar. We have already conducted around 3 webinars before that: the future of Python, the digital disruption, and all that for our engineering and IT students. And definitely, and with regard to the Indian economy, that was the first part. And in future, I think we will go for 2-3 webinars. And now you can say the outcome of COVID is now we are connected so closely with each other. So I think in future on Zoom meeting and all that, it is also possible, and we will try to cover the different questions. So now why I'm becoming selfish on from my point of view, reason being we are having around 150 plus MBA aspirants. They are going for MBA program, and majority of students, either they are being placed by the Byju's or the Jaro Education, or by Berger Paint, Asian Paints, Tommy Hilfiger, some of the other companies. But around 20% of the students, 15 to 20% of the students, they are going for the different banks like ICICI Bank, or for HDFC Bank, Axis Bank, Yes Bank. Reason being, you are a faculty of State Bank of India Institute for training and development of different levels of employees at the level of EGM, DGM, the zonal manager, and definitely you are imparting training and to all that. So I want at least in 2 to 3 quick minutes, in case if you are able to give a piece of advice, token of advice to all those students, those are joining the banking sector. Reason being, you are providing training to the different employees, and in case that advice that is workable to all the students, those are joining to the banking sector, that will definitely make some help to all those students. And I will request you later on, definitely some sort of handholding we will provide to those students, those are going to the banking sector, so that whatever the training and development you are doing in case of the nationalized banks, so similar sort of some portion of the training can be imparted to our students. So we can go for some of the guest lecture series for that. So thank you so much. Please, your advice. I will not take much of time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for this very nice question, sir. Banking sector is one sector which is very close to my heart, and not only I'm saying it because I love banking sector. Banking is a very rewarding career. The way I have seen banking, it is one sector which can offer phenomenal growth to its workforce. Okay, so because as students, we don't know much about the profiles in banking, whereas majority of the student feels that banking is all about selling insurance and current accounts and saving accounts. It is not so. Banking is a very diverse field, and the kind of growth that I have seen people taking in the banking sector is phenomenal. One sector which is going to give you a very handsome earning also and it will earn you a lot of respect also. So banking sector is one sector which I always recommend to student in case they get an opportunity to join. They should definitely join the banking sector. And in case there is any confusions related to different job profiles in the banks, the students are always welcome to reach out to me for any of their queries and doubts.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr.
So
Lalit.
we have the question box popped up with so many questions.
But I think Dr. Pooja, we can take right now. Reason being, there is a particular timings for this Zoom session, and I think in next 5 to 10 minutes we are supposed to go
Right,
for the
sir.
final questions. So 2-3 quick questions can be taken.
So there were a lot of questions on students. They were apprehensive about joining this MBA course, maybe due to this coronavirus, COVID-19. So, sir, I request you, Director, sir, if you could please throw some light on admissions to this course, MBA, because there are some apprehensions which are there in the minds of our prospective students.
So I think a little bit discussion, it has already taken place in case
Yes,
of
sir.
the MBA, the core area. Definitely, as we discussed earlier, a lot of opportunities means the second portion of the COVID-19, that is lot of opportunities in the shape of establishing of manufacturing hubs, in shape of a lot of opening ups, and definitely there will be the recovery of certain areas. But apart from this, my thought process is saying about the MBA, definitely it will be in high demand. Reason being, the entire economy, it is based upon diverse sectors. And for all sectors, definitely there will be always a requirement. And with regard to MBA, definitely right now, number of institutions, they are offering the MBA HR, finance, then marketing. Apart from this, now in IT, further the business analytics, lot of, and for example, I'm just right now highlighting this fact. Every state is having the technical university. For example, it is the Punjab, it is the Punjab Technical University. In Delhi, Delhi is a state, it is the Delhi Technological University. Then in Himachal Pradesh, it is the Himachal Pradesh Technical University, UP Tech, Haryana Technical University. So as per the mandatory requirement of the Government of India, now every state will go by one state technical university, and technical education, technical courses like engineering, MBA and MCA, they are to be governed only by the state technical university. So further, All India Council for Technical Education, they are now taking up lot of deliberations and brainstorming for enhancement in the level of the curriculum, which is to be being taught in case of MBA. The traditional portion, whatever it is being covered in the finance or the HR or the marketing, now major papers with regard to the supply chain management, about the retail management, then further about the data analytics, big analytics, and the operations and management. So they are upcoming. So definitely the government is seriously thinking about these areas, and they are adding into their curriculum. And this is the responsibility of the state technical university to upgrade their syllabuses. And I am the chairman of Board of Studies, Commerce and Management of IKG Punjab Technical University, and we are revising the syllabi of this MBA program after every 3 months, and we are incorporating it. So, and we are clearly adhering the circumstances of this All India Council for Technical Education. So, in a country, when we talk about the designing of course structure and the curriculum, there are the main two bodies. One, it is the All India Council for Technical Education, and second, it is the UGC. So further, the technical education being governed by the AICT, further to be developed by the various technical universities in the country. UGC, they are governing the traditional universities, so imparting the different portion of the education. So this way, the development of curriculum will lead to the development of this program. So I don't think any apprehension with regard to the admission in MBAs. And definitely the course is going to be more wonderful in the years to come. So this is my take. Anyone want to add in something with regard to this?
So now
Yeah,
that we,
can
yes,
I
sir.
add something?
Yes, sir, please, sir.
Yeah, you see, since I am teaching bankers all across different levels, when I teach the lower level employees like probationary officers, they are more interested in knowing the technical knowledge. But one thing that I have seen is as they grow the ladder in the organization, and when I interact with the AGMs and DGMs, the concepts of MBA when I teach them, that is one thing that makes very much sense to them. and they are
Yes.
very keen to learn the concept because they have the technical knowledge what is required on the job. But how that thing is connected to, conceptually connected, all the things are interwoven, and how,
Absolutely,
yes,
absolutely.
It
and
certainly adds value. Yeah.
that is one thing which is very apt in MBA curriculum and would help the students definitely as they grow the ladder in the organization. These are the concepts that actually work. Now that I'm trying to link the practical with the theory, I would say that everything that we teach in the class is relevant. That might not look relevant when at the time they join the organization, but as they grow in the organization, these are the concepts that are going to help them in the long term.
Very valuable advice, Lalit sir.
Very right,
I would like
Lalit.
to add.
Sir, that
I'm-
now yes, sir. Varun sir.
Lalit sir, I
So,
would like to add over here.
Varun,
Yes, yes.
quickly, please take one or two
Yeah.
points quickly.
See, you are very right.
yes, sir.
Lalit sir. Rather, I would say that students should take this opportunity now for this COVID-19 to utilize their time for many online certifications as well, because and for conceptual foundations as well, because it will have a long-term impact for their career.
Yes.
So education is evolving during COVID-19, I suppose, and this has led to tremendous, avenues for students now to learn and to grow, and especially MBA would be a program would
Yeah.
be evolving like any other.
Right.
Yes, definitely.
Ma'am, I was about to ask this question since we were touching the education sector. There was a question also, like what the shift to virtual learning could mean for future of higher education. And what's your take on the impact of COVID-19 on education sector? I was just about to ask this question, and thank you for answering it before I asked it.
Okay, Pooja, thank
Yeah.
you. Lalit,
Yeah.
would you
Dr.
like to
Raman?
answer? Yeah,
Yeah,
I will
I'll
like.
take it.
Okay,
I'll take it and then
you
probably
can't.
you can.
Okay.
Okay. So see, as all other sectors, education sector is also not isolated from, the coronavirus. And if I just look back 2-3 months and I just look at what's happened in the education industry and try to sum up in one word, that is blur. Nobody knows what's going on because this is the first time, that we are facing this problem. From all the big discussions inside the classroom and outside the classroom, they have just squeezed to just one sentence how to run the classes. Now this is an immediate challenge in front of all the educators, that how are we going to carry on with the operations, right? Now one thing that is good in India is that I would just like to relate education to the information technology sector of India. One thing that we specialize in IT is software, not hardware, right? So software is something that we specialize, and that is something which is going to provide leverage to the Indian education institutions, wherein we would be seeing a lot of online platforms of knowledge sharing that are coming in. So that is one good thing. Second thing that is going to increase largely in terms of education is the home tuitions. With the movement being restricted, the people would definitely prefer the kids to be sent to home tuitions. That is one trend that I see coming up.
Yes.
Your say.
Yeah, Lalit, I would like to answer this shift in virtual learning on three aspects. One is students and parents, second is on faculty, and third on education leaders. So I
Yes.
would say that the immediate impact of this learning, that education has not collapsed, and it is real victory, I suppose.
Yes.
A real victory. With the wink of an eye, we have shifted from the face-to-face communication to the online mode. I would not use the word online mode, rather it is remote teaching what we have pursued in the past 2-3 months. So on students, yes, there would be, because they are not in the physical setting, lack of compassion, building solitude can be some of the emotional issues they might be suffering. But at the same time, there was plethora of information for them on going for online virtual internships and online certifications and online evaluation of exams. So that is because change is the only thing that is actual reality. So students at this age, they have gone for this change, and that means that they would be a lifelong learners. We have learned of late, but they have learned at this very stage. Second shift in virtual learning, I would see on the faculty. Faculty is struggling in the past semester, yes, but yes, digital transformation is what is required. We have been, with the wink of an eye, we have been able to adapt from the face-to-face communication to the online learning. But at the same time, in the times to come, we need to focus more on as a proper package of digital learning online teaching methodology. The third most important impact would be on, I suppose, on the education leaders. The big only have to run the universities and the institutes. And what my take is that they need to find a trade-off now, a hybrid model, something with online and offline mode.
Yeah, can I add something?
Definitely.
For a
So
country
I
like
think
gross
we lost
enrollment ratio
your
is just
audio, Dr.
20%.
Anu.
In
So
some
later on we will take up.
countries. Yeah, you can.
Uh,
Yeah, see,
now at
one
this
thing-
platform, I would like to thank all the teaching fraternity across India. They have taken, just like in the crisis, the COVID-19, the frontline warriors like doctors, the paramedical staff, they are taking up a lot of efforts in order to overcome this crisis. But definitely the second line of warriors, I will say, it is about the teaching fraternity. And I must appreciate the efforts being put in by the different faculty members, by all the faculty, the teaching fraternity across India for motivating and adapting students. And definitely, I must appreciate the efforts of students as well in adapting the environment, and how to go for the time management, means within the 24 hour, how they are managing their studies. Definitely they are supposed to go by some household chores, and in such a case, how they are adopting it. So big, I must say the appreciation for the teaching as well as for all the students, and
Yes.
how they are going for certain certifications, attending so many webinars, spending so much time in front of screen and learning so much. So this is the another one area which we must appreciate, I think, during this part. So
Yeah.
I just received a
Sir,
call from the
can
coordinator
I
of
add
the Zoom.
something?
So we are having 5-6 more minutes in case if you want to take one or two quick questions, so that we can go ahead. And I think Dr. Lalit is raising his hand to say something. Dr. Lalit, please.
I would like to congratulate all the teachers for keeping this academic environment still live. I think it's not the infrastructure that makes a difference. You know, it's the teachers and the students that makes a difference. And you know, unfortunately, in India, you know, anyone what I have seen is anyone who owns a piece of land, you know, considers himself as an educationist. And you know, this is not the right thing. Education is being carried forward by the teachers and the students. And though we are using IT infrastructure right now, this is again a very good thing that we have very fast shifted on this.
Very right.
mode of
Very right.
platform.
Absolutely,
Very right.
absolutely right.
I would like to say something here. Okay,
I
Anumai,
would-
go ahead.
I would like to conclude now with one of the Mark Twain's
Yeah.
state sayings that says that if we teach today
Your voice is breaking, man.
Voice is good.
as we talk.
Should I continue with some question?
So meantime, you can go ahead with the question.
Right, sir, right. There's a question from Chirayu Gupta. So what is your view on loan moratorium, and will it benefit banking industry or result in a disadvantage for it? So Lalit sir, what are your views on this loan moratorium?
Loan moratorium is, though it's a very good step, I consider, that has been taken by the Reserve Bank. But yes, it is going to create some problems for the industry as well. You know, what is a moratorium is, as I already explained, we have not waived off the payments. Anyways, the business has to make the interest payment after 6 months, right? And now that the business cycles have not started running that fast, that they can make this payment, you know, this collective payment after 6 months, I think the governments and the Reserve Bank would definitely come forward to think that some more exemptions to the business houses can be given. As you know, if they just start charging penalties for the payment of non-interest after 6 months, I think it will not be feasible for many of the business houses to make these payments. I look forward to some more extensions from the central bank as far as these moratoriums are concerned. Otherwise, they will not serve the purpose.
Okay, sir. So next question is from Dr. Trilokya Dekha. Here, the question is, what will happen to all the unproductive loans like housing? Will it have some difference with the productive bank loans during post-COVID?
See, as I already discussed, with the revenues of the corporate sector and the revenues of the banks coming down, we are expecting to see a surge in the level of NPAs. Right now, it is roughly around 9%, and I expect this level to go around 11%. Definitely, yes, the NPAs are going to increase, but you know, lending is one thing that the banks cannot run away from. That is the very nature of our business. And especially, you know, in case of public sector bank, there are certain credits which are compulsory, which we cannot say no to. So there are many restrictions in the system because of which, you know, the productivity of the bank gets hampered. And this is one thing which we are prepared for right now. And I would say that, you know, the fundamentals of the banks in India are strong enough that we can, you know, absorb these kind of shocks.
Great, sir. So there's another question by Sir Ranjit Singh. I just want to know how it is better to give package through the modes of loans in spite of direct benefit transfers to the needy people. Because what I suppose is that if you give money, then only they will spend and support the economy.
I'm sorry, I couldn't get the question.
I'll try to read it out again. I just want to know how it is better to give package through the modes of loans. All right, I think probably he's talking about the package which was given by Indian government, huge amount, right? So through the modes of loans in spite of direct benefits transferred to the needy people. Okay. Because what I suppose is that if you give money, then only they will spend and support economy. So probably he's asking that what are the advantages, benefits of the loan?
The question seems to be right, but one thing that we need to take care of here is that, you know, when you give a loan to a business house, the money only does not goes to a business house. That goes to, you know, enormous number of employees that are working in that business unit. And that is the only way that we can, you know, bring the money in circulation. Yes. Giving money to one individual maybe result in something, you know, that person will spend the money, 20% he'll spend and 80% he will save. It will go to a bank account of one person, but, you know, giving loans to business houses actually helps in running a lot of, you know, families.
It is a money circulation. Circulation.
There is one concept called the velocity of money. You know, it has to be made fast, and loans are credit is the only way, you know, by which, you know, we can make this happen in the Indian economy.
Right, sir.
Very right, Lalit sir. I would like to add that DBT would not serve over here because direct benefit transfer would not be helping over here. Rather, the credit creation and the velocity of money, as you have talked about, would surely will help in the foundation of the economy as well, strong fundamental of the economy as well. So that is the right move from the government side.
What sir is saying is, you know, right for countries like, you know, we have like Russia, wherein the loan to GDP ratio is almost 0. All the transactions are happening on cash. Right. Yeah. This kind of a model would work in those countries, but in India, where, you know, we are largely dependent on credit, this is something that we obviously cannot run away from.
Right.
So there's another question, which is, do you think the work environment will become more challenging after the COVID-19, especially the service sector? So I think this question has already been answered.
See, the moment you stop facing challenges in your working environment, you stop to grow. Right. And this is one thing that we should always be ready for. Don't run away from the challenges. Just concentrate on how you are going to handle the challenge. I think one challenge was to, you know, give education to the people and see how we have handled the challenge. So challenges are always going to be there.
Very well answered.
Very rightly said. Very true. Dr. Lalit, we have learned in this scenario that face the challenge. During COVID-19, we have learned so much how to face the challenge, and that in a positive way. And indeed, this was like a blessing in disguise, I suppose.
Yes. Absolutely, ma'am.
So India is one country which is being appreciated world over because it has been able to bridge what we call digital divide. Dr. Bhaga and Dr. Lalit, they all have been mentioning this thing that, how we have been, like, government has launched channels on television so that education is accessible to people living in far-flung and remote areas who don't have internet connectivity. So we have been able to, and that is, it's only the challenging times which help us know our real potential. And COVID-19 has brought this to the fore.
Yeah.
Very right. The digital divide, which has been, government is trying to, decrease that digital divide, which has been amplified during this COVID-19. Yeah.
Right, ma'am.
The next question is from Karina Mahajan. Will it be good time for investing in stock market or financial instruments, or should we wait?
No, my take on this is that you should wait because markets are very turbulent at this point of time. Maybe anyone who says that market is going to grow is maybe an astrologer of a highest order. So I would suggest
Dr. Lalit, I would like to add that financial astrologers are coming up nowadays, and there are lots many financial astrologers now. They are helping BSc and NSC as well.
In this time of coronavirus, we have seen more economists coming up
Right.
than doctors. So,
Yeah,
True, sir,
right,
true.
right.
So there's another question for middle class. So as we know, our economy is mainly built on middle class people and their business activities. What should the government do for those people? So what has the government done, or what steps should government take for middle class?
see, I think the thrust of measures that have been taken by the government are majority for the middle and the lower middle class, right? It was not that the higher level corporate sector is something that will come out of this shock very soon, but middle class, employees and workers are the people that are harmed, to larger extents. So majority of the moves have been taken by the government. As far as the salaried people are concerned, see, we cannot anyways run away from taxes. Okay. And but government has given you is some relief in terms of, I suppose, the provident fund structure has been revised just to ensure that some liquidity is there in the hands of people so that spending happens. And many such moves are expected in the times to come as well.
So there's another question.
The
Yes.
change
Dr. Pooja,
Yes, sir.
the change of entire.
So I have seen that in Q&A, most of the questions are related to SMEs, or they're related to, you can say, middle class, or they're related to the future course of action which India, or future economy of India. So in just next 30 seconds, I would like to give a glimpse of what precautionary measures can be taken by Indian government related to all these, you can say, problems which we are facing right now. See, we have already seen that SMEs, they are the major, you can say, backbone of export. They are giving 50% of the export, but they're handling 50% of the export. Even employment, 40 to 50% of the employment is being generated by SMEs. Even if you take example of, you can say collateral loans, which government has already given to SMEs, they need to work on direct transfer rather than, or you can say, increasing the debt on them. And possibly, if targeted income transfer can be done to these people rather than universally transferring income to everyone in this country, so it will create an opportunity. It will create an opportunity where you should not see a closure of most of the manufacturing units. Rest, if you take example of, you can say, Mr. Taimur, who is the managing director of DBS Bank Singapore, he said, we have to think about domestic consumption, but please try to come across with the, you can say, alluring developed nations so that they can come across with their ideology in order to enhance the export. But at last, people, they have to, you can say, they have to feel calm, because already unemployment rate has touched 27%, and you will see middle class is going to suffer in the coming months. And for that, wait, watch, and government direct transfer is the only, I think, option which can save some of the SMEs, or you can say middle class or salaried class people, so that they can continue in a, you can say, prosperous way. So, but again, wait and watch and see how much time medicine will take to clear this pandemic environment, and at last how to work on the major criteria which are being faced by the lower and, you can say, middle class people. This is the major issues which can be resolved in the coming months. But again, safe, calm, and stay is the only words which can help our economy to grow in a prosperous way.
Sir, there is one more issue. It's not only the arrangement of funds which is a problem. There are certain operational issues as well, because since we have a vast population of 135 crores, and I think it would take some time to disseminate the impact of all these measures on this such a vast population, right? But yes, I'm a bit glad on the efforts which are being done by the government. This is probably the first time any Indian government looks to be determined in this time of crisis, and the way they have handled it is something which is really applaudable. And I'm very hopeful that some positive news are going to come maybe in the next 6 to 8 months.
Very
Yes,
right, Dr.
obviously.
Lalit. In the past 1 decade, more than rather 1 decade, it is for the first time that the macroeconomic policies which we were actually being learned in the books are being actually implemented by the government.
Yes.
Credit creation, and that shows that how the fundamentals are, government is trying to make the fundamentals strong.
Yes.
DBT, for example, if you give 100 rupees a small kid and say go and bring copy with it, he will definitely buy toffees with it.
Obviously,
yes. So the only way for the macroeconomic phenomena to be done, credit creation is and velocity of money are the only two ways to be, handle the economy.
That is why we are routing the money through banks in the form of loans.
Very right, very right.
End use of fund is very important.
That is whether the fund is going to be used for productive purposes or for, so this is the end use only that matters for the economy.
Yes, obviously.
Very right, sir.
So I think now today, because we have taken almost 2 hours, I would like to request the moderator, Dr. Pooja, to conclude the session, and later on, if any questions still they are pending, later on we can revert on that. Thank you so much.
Right, so that was a very productive and very valuable discussion, I would say, we had today during the webinar. We still have a lot of questions which are there, which are still coming up in the question and answer box. And sorry, due to the paucity of time, we will not be able to answer all the questions, but we will be sure to follow up afterwards. We will be emailing you the answers on the emails that you have provided to us in your registration. So Dr. Lalit Arora has very beautifully elucidated the figures, facts, and findings related to the impact of COVID-19 on businesses in India on a sector-specific level, I would say. Thank you, Dr. Lalit, for giving us such informative facts about the current situation. And sir also discussed the measures. Thank you so much, sir. Sir also discussed the measures the Government of India and Reserve Bank of India have taken over the past few weeks, along with a variety of initiatives taken by government in healthcare and socio-economic development. Thank you so much, sir. Now, COVID-19 is a moving target, and we don't know what the developments are. And so nobody has the right answer also. But after this webinar, I personally feel that the data and the comprehensive information that has been discussed by our worthy speaker, Dr. Lalit Arora, makes us more optimistic and confident that these measures are going to help us ride this tide, adapt, and come out even stronger. And following this, our panelists also gave a deep insight into the long-term impacts of COVID-19 and talked about various sectors like education, MSMEs, shifting of manufacturing base to countries other than China. We believe that the knowledge you have shared will help all of us immensely in every aspect. Thank you so much. I'm sure that the knowledge disseminated during the webinar must have contributed significantly to the existing knowledge base of our attendees. Many thanks to our brilliant speaker, panelists, director sir, Dr. Rajesh Bagga, and all the attendees who have joined the webinar live. If any one of you had any problems during the webinar, we'll be sending you a link on your registered email ID wherein you can watch the webinar and get the relevant information, because we had a lot of questions on this. They were requesting the presentation also. They were requesting the details of the webinar also. So we'll be sending you the presentation, the details on your registered email ID. And we would like you to be connected to us for our upcoming series of webinars, as Director Sir mentioned. We'll be conducting a series of webinars on different topics, and this is just the beginning. And once again, I thank all of you, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Once again, thank you so much, Dr. Lalit, for being a part of this webinar, being a proud alumnus. So definitely, we are really thankful from the core of our heart by all the students, by all the faculty members. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you very much, sir. It was my pleasure, and even I have came across a lot of new things from the panelists. It was a learning session for me as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lalit. Thank you so much.
Thank you.